Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel, and welcome to another reading vlog. Today is the first day of Reindeer Readathon, and meaning it's December 1st, and I'm actually off work today. I haven't been using much of my PTO this year, and my partner and I just got done having a lot of company. His parents drove over and stayed for a couple of days, and then my mom came over, and we all had, Thanksgiving dinner together, and just had, a really lovely time. My partner's birthday also just happened, so we went to dinner as a group for that. And it was really just a lovely weekend. We had a great time. It was so nice to just have a casual visit, and I think it was what we all really needed. So it was a really great weekend, but knowing that we were going to have company for several days, I decided to go ahead and try and use some of my PTO to have a day off to help decompress and transition back into working. So today, because I have that time, I really want to try and kickstart my reading for December so that I am not letting my team down for Reindeer Readathon. This is a competitive team-based readathon, and my reading has not been great throughout the year, so I want to take this as an opportunity to read as much as I physically can and hopefully motivate myself, energize myself to read like the wind for the rest of December. So, the plan for today is to try and read two books, which is Backdraft by Cole McCade, which I'm using for Rudolph, which is a book with no eyes on the cover, and then Murder at the Black Cat Cafe, which I'm going to have to use two hands. There we go. Which is by Seiji Yokomizo, which is for the Cupid prompt. This was a choose your own pairing, and I chose print book that is translated. And this one, Backdraft, I can also use for the Christmas Lights prompt, which is to read an ebook. So, if I can finish both of these, I will have completed total 2 prompts and 1 bonus prompt, and I could also start a third book and get myself kind of set up for success for the rest of December, because I did some math and I have to read 100 pages a day, and I haven't done that in a while, which it's something I'd really like to achieve, so maybe this is the month that gets me started with that new reading habit. Who's to say? But yeah, that's the goal for today. Before I get started, though, I need to go get me some breakfast and some coffee, and I'm kind of thinking a slice of leftover pie sounds very appealing right now. So I'm going to go do that, and then we'll get started with the reading. I'm making some pretty good progress. It's about 1:30, and I'm halfway through Backdraft by Cole McCade. So this is the 10th book in Criminal Intentions, and I thought real quick before I take my dog on a walk, I'd give you an update. So halfway through, I'm enjoying this one a lot. We're following Malcolm and Songjay, who, if you're unfamiliar with the series, if you haven't seen any of my previous videos talking about it, are both homicide detectives in the Baltimore Police Department. Across the course of this series, they have a bit of a romance together, but they're also working on various homicide cases. This particular installment, they've already been in a relationship for a while, and now they've been pulled into an internal affairs investigation when there is an officer-involved shooting, and one of the officers involved in the shooting is related to one of the internal affairs investigators. So they're being brought in to try and make the investigation as objective as possible, or at least make it look like it's being run objectively. They also feel like internal affairs is hiding something from them, as well as the officers involved, and the evidence they have is all very messy. There's not really anything to prove the guilt of the officers involved in the shooting, but there's also not really anything to exonerate them, and it feels like internal affairs is trying to control what they are able to see and what they're able to learn from the various people involved. So there's just a lot going on. It's very messy, and I'm really enjoying the way that the mystery is unfolding so far. I also really like, since this is the 10th installment in a series where the characters are in some sort of romantic relationship, I like the way that this is developing that relationship. We're getting very different pieces of emotional development for the two characters. Songjay is still really learning to trust Malcolm and to feel okay being in a relationship, but he's also hiding some information from Malcolm, and he's afraid of the fallout of that, whether Malcolm finds out about it or whether something happens because he doesn't tell him. So there's sort of that emotional thing going on for Songjay, and then for Malcolm, he's trying to right some wrongs that he committed in a past relationship, but is risking pushing Songjay away by being kind of too what's the word I want? Maybe overwhelming is the right word, that he's just trying so hard to be supportive and to be there for Songjay because he failed to do that for a previous partner, that he risks kind of pushing him away by being too involved. So it's interesting. I'm liking the way it's developing between the two of them and the challenges that they're both facing. And on top of that, we're also getting some development for the overarching plotline, because this is a series that's very much structured like a series of Criminal Minds. If you're familiar with that show, or there's kind of individual stories, but then sometimes there will be an overarching plotline with some sort of big bad in the background that comes to a bit of a culmination at the end of the series. So that's kind of what we have going on here. There's a villain working in the background, and we're getting some interesting development with some of our side characters. There's a drug dealer who is a really prominent side character, and he and his significant other have had some tensions across the previous books, which are kind of coming to a head as they're both trying to find different ways out of the situation that they're in. And Sade, who is the sort of like, if you've seen Criminal Minds, the Penelope Garcia kind of character, they're the like tech expert. They're having to navigate some complicating factors with their relationship with the other characters and with some ulterior motives that they have that no one else really knows about, except apparently the captain, who isn't talking. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of different threads happening, and I like the way that this installment is pulling that all together so far. So that's kind of where we're at for now. I'm excited to see where this installment is going to go, but for now I need to take this little pup who is now behind me right here. I need to take her out for her midday walk, and then I'm going to get back to reading once we get back. So, I have finished Backdraft, and it's about 6 o'clock. I finished it about an hour ago, but I needed to take a minute to pack to head to my mom's house. But I really enjoyed it. I think I'm giving it probably 4 stars-ish, 4.5, not really sure yet. But I really enjoyed it. It's a good installment in the series. I liked the way the mystery wrapped up, and I was correct on one of my guesses on the twist, so I was very delighted about that. I felt very clever having gotten that twist correct. I liked that mystery resolution. It's one of those mysteries where it's not so much about who did it, but proving that they did it, which I thought was a fun mix-up to the formula. I also really liked the ways that Malcolm and Songjae's relationship grew throughout this story and the kind of tacit understanding they reach at the end of the book and the way that that changes the dynamic for them a little bit. And there were also some developments in the overarching plot that I thought were interesting. So I think this was a really great installment in the series. The only thing that really brought it down for me, and why I'm leaning more towards a 4 over a 4.5, is that there are some sections at the beginning that really drag, where we get some very extended flashback scenes. Also, apologies if you can hear the train in the distance. I don't know if you can or not, but we get some very extended flashback scenes that I felt like really dragged the pace to a halt at a couple of moments. And there were also some sections where, in the more overtly romance sections of the book, there were moments that almost felt like freeze frames in the characters' minds, whoever we were getting the kind of perspective of, getting that sort of internal monologue of. Moments where it was like a freeze frame for them that, again, just dragged a little bit too long, where they're really reflecting on the moments they're experiencing, but it's just so dramatic and over the top the way it's described that I was kind of like, okay, yeah, I got it, let's move on. Which I have to preface that comment by saying that I recognize that a lot of the romance in this series is like that. A lot of it is quite dramatic displays of emotion and dramatic conversations. Not all of it, but that's a, healthy dose of the romance. I just feel like there were moments in this installment where it was getting dragged out a little bit too long and dragging the pace of the story down. So that's that. That was my feelings on Backdraft. I'm glad I read it, and it feels like we're building to the crescendo of the kind of villain's plan, which hilariously I think the next book is actually called Crescendo, so I'm going to try and pick that up fairly soon, but probably not this month because of Reindeer Readathon. I'll probably pick it up in January, but I do want to read it a little bit more back-to-back with this one, because I feel like I've been dragging this series out quite a while. I've been reading it for a couple of years now, and I think that that is causing me to forget some of what's happened in earlier installments. So when there's like callbacks to things or like little references, I kind of miss them because I'm like, who is that? What's happening? Because it's been so long since I've read those earlier books in the series. So I just need to get on that. I need to read more of these, which is fine. That is not a bad problem to have. So now, moving on from Backdraft, I think I'm actually, rather than moving on to Murder at the Black Cat Cafe, I think I'm instead going to move on to my other ebook, since I'm going to be going to my mom's house. It's a little bit easier to carry. And that one is The Golden Raven by Nora Sakovic. It's the 5th book in the All for the Game series. And I'm going to be reading that for my friend's Cursed Book Club, our thing where I am the designated reader of cursed books, and I read things that are kind of terrible for their entertainment. So I'm going to be reading it for that. That may slow me down a little bit because I'll be kind of checking in with them and giving them updates on what's happening in the story. But I'm going to start that this evening and probably chat with a friend of mine who's going to be working late, and should be a good time. For now, though, I'm going to get some food and head over to my mom's house, and then I'll get reading again once I'm on the other side of that trip. think I completely forgot to update while I was at my mom's house. I did remember to charge the camera and charge my mic, but I forgot to actually pick them up and film anything. But I am 150 pages into The Golden Raven. Is it the 3rd, I think? 3rd of December? Yeah, so I feel like I'm making pretty good progress on my goals for the readathon. But I'm 150 pages in, and I would say I am having a marginally better time with this one than I had with the previous book, The Sunshine Court. I'm enjoying Jean being a hateful little gremlin to everyone around him, and I like Jean's POV sections as we're learning more about him and learning more about the things that he doesn't know because of his time in the nest, the way that he's like completely unequipped to deal with outside life and the ways that he's kind of grappling with that or failing to grapple with that. So I'm finding that really interesting. And I think Jean is also developing really interesting relationships with Coach Riemann, who's the head coach of the Trojans, as well as Cody and Xavier, who I think might be the vice captains, both of the vice captains. Particularly Cody, I think, is creating this like very warm friendship with Jean in a way that like none of the other characters have really managed. I think Cody is the person that Jean seems the most comfortable with. And honestly, I know that this is structured a little bit more like a romance than the previous installments in this series, where it's much more clear that like there's an attraction and a potential romance between Jean and Jeremy, who is the captain of the team. But I fully ship Jean and Cody. Cody is unfortunately in a different polyamorous throuple and is not available for Jean to date. However, that would be the superior ship, because Jean and Cody are just so sweet together. I really like them. And Cody is the one person who seems to really listen to Jean and remember that Jean was in this very specific context that has led to him being unequipped for the outside world. And Cody is the person who is being the most gentle, respectful of his boundaries, and helping him navigate as he's figuring out what is normal and what is not, based on his prior experiences. So I'm really enjoying that experience, or that friendship growing within the story. I'm not as much invested in Jeremy. He's pretty bland, and now we've gotten the like a tragic backstory bit lined up for him, where his family is kind of terrible. They're kind of racist and homophobic, and he's dealing with like super high expectations that they placed on him. And I think that would be interesting if it wasn't for the fact that like the other main character is dealing with the fallout of having been owned by the Yakuza as a like sports slave. So it makes Jeremy kind of bland and uninteresting by comparison. And he also really is struggling to understand Jean and like wrap his mind around how much Jean is suffering and struggling as he's adapting to his new life in California. And I feel like it makes Jeremy feel a little self-centered and not really interested in helping Jean in any real way. So I'm finding that kind of frustrating. But overall, I'm still having a decent time. There is still no plot to speak of. Every time plot rears its head, it gets chopped off. It's like a Hydra, except for a Hydra with very few heads, because every time something starts to happen, it just immediately gets cut short. It gets resolved quickly. We have a person who's a threat to Jean who is immediately executed, and I'm not even kidding about that one. There's another character in the background from the Foxes from the previous trilogy who's on trial for murder. It's fine, though. He's cleared of all charges. And that's it. No plot to speak of. The book is just Jean stumbling through life and hoping for the best. I am still having a good time with it. It's a weird vibe. So that's where we're at with The Golden Raven. And I suspect I won't check in again until I've actually finished the thing, because I don't know that I'm going to have any different thoughts. So unless something really dramatic happens and the book changes in some really big way, I'll probably just come back with some final thoughts on that one. But I'm really glad with the progress I'm making so far, and I'm now thinking about what am I going to read next. I do think I want to start my audiobook soon, because I'm going to be listening to The Legacy of Arniston House by Teal Huchu, which is the 4th book in the Edinburgh Night series. I wanted to start it today, but I know that the things I'm working on today are not really conducive to me being able to work and listen at the same time, because I'm doing research for a story right now and also doing some editing. So things that I need to focus in on a little bit more, but I am going to be putting a new project on my loom either tonight or tomorrow. So I think I think I might listen to it then. So that's kind of what I'm seeing as like the kind of next few steps, finishing up the Golden Raven, starting Legacy of Arneson House, and then I think once I'm done with that, I was gonna go on to Murder at the Black Cat Cafe because it's my other short one. But I think I might actually hold on to it for now because it is short. And instead, I think I want to start, I think it's at the bottom of the stack. Yeah, I can't pull it out right now. It's way down here at the very bottom. I think I want to start my longest book, my 500 plus page book, which is Before They're Hanged. So I think that's going to be the little progression for the next little bit. And I think that might end up being this video. I hadn't actually thought previously where I wanted to like carry this video to, how long I wanted it to run, but I feel like if I finish like 4 books, there's 9 in my stack, I feel like I could finish 4 books, and then that'd be a nice little cohesive unit. So that's the plan going forward, and I'll check back in with you later when I have some additional thoughts. Welcome back to the same angle, but with a different outfit, so that you know time has passed. This is a classic vlog move for me, but I'm here not to give you a reading update, but to tell you that I finally have Snake Eater by T. Kingfisher. This is on my TBR for the month, and this was the only book I had put on my TBR that was a pre-order that I was waiting for. It's finally here, and I'm so excited to read this. I've been hearing some really great things, and I love the cover of this book. I know I love T. Kingfisher's horror novels, so I'm probably gonna have to move this up in my priority list now that it's here, because I want to pick it up immediately, because I just love her writing so much. But this one sounds super fun. It's about a young woman who ends up in the desert while she's fleeing her past. She's left a house from her aunt who passed away, and there's some sort of ancient god in the desert, and she's dealing with the wrath of that god. That is all I know, and I don't want to know anymore. I just want to dive straight in because I just love T. Kingfisher's characters and the weird, wacky situations that she puts them in, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this one plays out. So I just had to update about that because I was excited. It actually arrived unexpectedly today because it was still saying it was supposed to come like Saturday, I think, and it hadn't updated like location in a couple of days, but I went to take my dog on her midday walk and came back and there it was. So that was very exciting for me. Speaking of the dog, she is hanging out with me. Let's see if I can get the camera over here so you can see her. We love the moving gimbal. There she is. She likes to hang out under my desk in the mid-afternoon, so it's time for that. It's like 1:30, so she's just right on time. I have finally finished The Golden Raven. I finished it last night, about 12:30, so today's December 5th. I feel like I'm making pretty good progress at this point. But I finished The Golden Raven, and I have very mixed feelings about this because I think it did some things I don't care for, and it did a lot of things that I actually really liked, so I was pleasantly surprised at how much I enjoyed this one. So in this particular installment in this series, we're following Jean as he has begun to settle into his role on the Trojans team. And he's starting to get to know his teammates. He's starting to develop a routine on campus. And it's really more of a slice of life, I think, than a lot of the previous books have been. It's just looking at the way that Jean's friendships develop. And it's very clearly aiming for like a romance thing between Jean and his ex partner, Jeremy, who is also the captain of the team. It's much more clearly aiming for romance than any of the previous books have been. There's a lot more moments where they're like looking at each other and you get their internal monologue about their kind of grappling with attraction to each other, but trying to give the other person space or feeling like that's not something that they can pursue. So there's a lot more of that in this book, but I would say the book more heavily focuses on Jeremy's backstory. We kind of learn about Jeremy's awful family. They're like comedically villainous. So we learn a lot about them and about why Jeremy is the way he is now, why he chooses to be optimistic every day, which I thought that part was interesting. I just thought that he was the most bland relationship that Jean developed throughout the book. So we get a lot of that, and then we also get mostly Jean developing friendships with the other players on the team. So he ends up having a stronger friendship with Kat and Layla, which I was glad of because they really were getting on my nerves in the last book. Kat, Layla, and Jeremy really didn't respect Jean's boundaries like at all in the Sunshine Court. They kept pushing and pushing and pushing for him to tell them things that he wasn't ready to tell them. But I felt like they all three were better behaved in this one. So I had more of an appreciation for the ways that his friendships with Kat and Layla and Jeremy developed through this one, the ways that he like found little moments of peace with each of them and started to open up to each of them of his own accord, thankfully, about the things that had happened to him before or about his feelings about certain things that have happened to him since he's been with the Trojans. So I liked those friendships a little bit better here. He also develops really sweet friendships with several of the other players. Cody in particular is, I think, another one of the defense players like Jean, and they start bringing him fruit because they know that he didn't get to try a lot of fruit when he was with the Ravens, and so he starts bringing them fruit as like a peace offering, and it's very sweet. And Cody is one of the few characters I feel like completely and totally respects Jean, but also wants to do everything in their power to ensure that he's okay. So they're the one that really remembers, like, oh, well, he's not comfortable going places alone. So they're the one that steps in to make sure that he's got somebody to go with him if he's going somewhere and he's, like, Jeremy's not available, Kat and Layla are not home, and they're not going to be there. So Cody's one that steps in to, like, walk him home, stay with him until the others get back, that kind of thing. So I really liked that friendship. He also has a really sweet friendship with these two guys that are both named Derek, who just immediately decide that he's like one of their own, and they start bringing him in on all of their jokes and making new jokes with him, and he finds them kind of annoying, but also like appreciates how like welcoming they are to him, which I thought was interesting. I just enjoy the way that they kind of bring him more into the rest of the team. They're the ones that kind of pull him into the larger friend group of the team as a whole, outside of the group that Jeremy, Kat, and Layla are a part of, that's sort of this smaller subset of the team. So I really liked his friendship with the Derricks. And then also he has this sort of mentor relationship he develops with a younger player named Tanner, who wants to learn everything Jean can possibly teach him. He doesn't really fear Jean, but he respects him, and it almost is like Jean hangs the stars in the sky. He loves Jean so much and just like wants to learn everything possible from him. It almost is like he sees Jean as like an older brother, and it's just really sweet. And I really liked that relationship. I think Jean's relationship to Lucas evolves in interesting ways here, because Lucas is the younger brother of someone who had badly harmed Jean previously. And so that's not necessarily a good relationship, but it's one that's kind of evolving as they're both grappling with what this third person has done. And then finally, he develops a really interesting friendship and like coach-player relationship with Coach Riemann, who almost starts to act as a sort of father figure for Jean throughout. He's like clearly worried about him, but afraid of like overstepping boundaries, and he has a sense that Jean doesn't really trust him or feel safe with him throughout the book, so he's trying to find ways to support Jean from the sidelines and trying to give him the space that he needs to start healing and growing. And I just think Riemann is a really interesting character. He's one of the few like truly like functional and responsible adults in the series. The other coaches are good too, but I think that Riemann is just particularly interesting in the way that he is trying so hard to give Jean space, but also clearly wants so badly to protect him from all of the awful fallout that's happening. And I really like the way that they're sort of kind of semi-friendship. It's obviously quite different because it's like Raymond does have authority over him as his coach, but like the way that their sort of friendship develops and allows Jean to start thinking about like what does it actually mean to be a coach, and start thinking of his coaches not as like godlike figures that can punish him, but as people who are there to like support his journey as an athlete. So I really liked that part of it, and I really enjoyed a lot more of this book than I thought I would. It's still very silly. It's still full of things that's like, that's not how any of that works. But I think that the parts of this that are about relationships and about these friendships that are blossoming between Jean and the other players, and the way that Jean is starting to break down everything he had been told during his years with the Ravens and his years with the Moriyamas, as he's like starting to reevaluate what it means for something to be normal and for what it means for him to like have a place on the team. I really thought that was well done. I really like Jean's healing journey, and I really like the friendships he's making, and I'm actually really intrigued to read the third book in the series. I think there is supposed to be a third book. I saw a little bit of speculation and or information that there's supposed to be a third book in the Jean series, so there's going to be like a conclusion, and I would say there has to be, because there is not really a conclusion in this. It just kind of stops. So I am actually interested to see what happens in the third book. I'm back with a couple of updates, and I'm going to try and do this as quickly as I can because my partner and I need to go do some errands, but I've been struggling to update because I'm struggling to talk about one of the books that I've started reading. So let's try this again. Let's see if I can manage it and be somewhat concise. The book that I'm struggling with, and the first update that I have, is Before They Are Hanged by Joe Abercrombie. And I'm not struggling with this because I'm not liking it. I am absolutely loving this book. I am 200 pages in. I am fully invested. I had no trouble kind of picking up from where the last book left off. Even though it's been more than a year since I read that book, I'm just having a fabulous time with this. It's just a difficult book to talk about, though, because it's not really got a clear plot to talk about. It's a lot more like watching a chess game, and you can see half of the pieces on the board, but you can't see the other half of the pieces, and you can't see the players. So you're watching the different characters get shuffled around the world, but you don't know to what end any of that shuffling is happening. And I just love that. I love it. It works so well for me as a reader. There's lots of like political machinations and scheming. There's adventure and a quest. There's action. There's like friendships being made and broken. And I'm just having an absolutely great time with this. It is just such a hard book to describe because it is the second book in a series. And it's the second book in a series that does not have like a clear plot. I can't tell you that like X person is trying to take over the world, and so we're following characters who are trying to stop them. What we have instead is a place called the Union that is in conflict with two of its neighbors, with the Northmen in, you guessed it, the north, and with Gurkul in the south. And we're watching characters who are dealing with those conflicts in some way. Half of our characters are people who directly serve the Union, and then the other half are people who find themselves sort of aligned with the Union's goals because they, for various reasons, oppose the Union's enemies. And that's it. That's the story, is just watching all of these different conflicts play out over time through these individual characters who are just like so vivid and interesting, and I love following them. I think in the Blade itself, you start out with 3 POVs, and it expands to 6 in a way that like slowly opens up those conflicts to you and shows you a little bit more of what's happening in the world. In this one, we're kicking off with all 6 of those POVs. We have half of them are on like an impossible journey. Another one is on the front lines of the war against the North. There's another one that has gone off to try and protect a city in the south from Gurkish control. And our final POV is wandering around trying to make trouble for the king of the Northmen just because they hate them. Like, characters with his companions just going, you know what, I hate that guy, let's make his life hard. And I'm really enjoying all of those POVs. I think in this one, Logan remains my favorite. He's one of the 3 central POVs you start with in the Blade itself, and I think one of the 3 POVs that is most associated with the book. If you've heard of The First Law, you've probably heard of, like, Logan Ninefingers, the Bloody Nine. You've probably also heard of Glokta. You may also have heard of Jezzel Dent Luther. That's sort of our 3 initial POVs. And I love all of them, but Logan remains my favorite. He's a sort of complex warrior figure who's a little bit older, and he's got a complicated relationship to his own reputation and the things that he's done to gain that reputation, and is now trying to impart wisdom to some of the other characters around him. And I really enjoy him. I think he's so fun to follow. I'm also pleasantly surprised that Jezzel is growing on me. He is such an asshole in the first book. He's so self-centered and treats his friends like crap. But in this one, he's facing hardship sort of for the first time in his life, because he's like a nobleman's son. He's always had things kind of easy, and now he's facing hardship, and he doesn't really know what to do with that. And the ways that he is developing to cope with that hardship, I think, are really interesting, and he's really growing on me. I actually like Jezzel in this book, which I was not expecting. And then finally, our kind of other most commonly known POV, Glokta. I just love him anyway. He's this kind of awful person, but he approaches everything with a sense of like, I don't even know why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I don't know if there's another way for me to be. And I think that like internal conflict is really interesting. Plus, I just think he's fun. He's constantly like outsmarting other people. He's really snarky and kind of a jerk to people who deserve to be jerks too. Like people who are, I don't know how to say that. I'm struggling with figuring out how to structure that sentence, but like, he's mean to people who kind of deserve it in a way that I'm finding very entertaining. And I'm just having a great time with all of our characters. So I'm going to stop there because I feel like I'm starting to get into that rambly mode again, where I'm just like, I don't know what to tell you, but I love this book. And we're going to leave it there. I am having a great time. I think I've already said this, but I'm 200 pages in, so I'm right there. And I'm hoping to power through the rest of this in the upcoming week. But alongside, before they are hanged, wow, I forgot the title really bad for a second there. Alongside it, I was planning to start an audiobook, and I have not done that because I have not dressed the loom. It is back here behind me, remarkably naked, and it's going to be a little bit before I manage to get the loom dressed because I need to make a space for that to happen. I'm planning to work on something that's got like a 9-foot warp, which means that I need to clear 9 feet in our living room for me to warp it. And I haven't done that yet. So I haven't started my audiobook for The Legacy of Arneson House, and instead I decided to start Murder at the Black Cat Cafe. We have come full circle with my vlog plans for this video, and started one of the books I originally planned to read last weekend. So far I've just read the prologue, but I'm intrigued, I'm invested. The prologue sets up that this is going to be a faceless corpse mystery, which is not a subset of mysteries I'm super familiar with, so I'm intrigued to see how that's going to go. And I immediately like our characters. We have a narrator who, in the prologue, is telling us how he came to know the main detective, and then this detective who's sort of, at least in the prologue, he's sort of this, like, lighthearted, jokey kind of character, but clearly, like, very intelligent and very good at what he does. And so in our prologue, we find out, like, how the two of them met and how it came to be that the narrator is chronicling the detective's mysteries, and then clarifies, like, why the detective has sent him the documents for this particular mystery, because the narrator is really interested in writing a faceless corpse mystery that doesn't follow the usual sort of plot twist structure for that kind of mystery. So that's all I've gotten through so far, but I am really liking the writing. As I said, I'm enjoying our two characters, our narrator and the detective himself. And I'm excited to see where it's going to go. It's definitely a very different tone to Before They Were Hanged, which is exactly what I wanted. And it's a lot shorter, so I think I might be able to finish this fairly quickly and have another book ticked off my list, which would be great. It has been a very early morning. I had to drop Jacob off at the airport about 4 a.m. so that he could catch an early flight for work. And I came back and got no further sleep. So an attempt was made, an attempt was failed. But I did have to stay up last night to make sure the dog got her last walk of the evening, and I managed to finish Murder at the Black Cat Cafe in that time, so not a total loss. I liked this okay. What I actually like better is that this unexpectedly had a second story in the back of it. So the first, 136 pages are Murder at the Black Cat Cafe, but the last 90-ish pages of the book are actually, Why Did the Well Wheel Creak, which I really liked. So starting with the kind of titular story here, Murder at the Black Cat Cafe, I thought this was okay. I think I talked in my last update about the prologue and about how the narrator talks about wanting to write a faceless corpse mystery, so that's kind of what we know we're getting going into Murder at the Black Cat Cafe. And I think that this one starts out strong because we're following the police as they're investigating when a young officer on patrol happens to see a monk kind of unburying something in the backyard of this brothel called the Black Cat Cafe, and he realizes what the monk is digging up is actually a body. And so they start investigating, and the police are pretty competent. We end up with Detective Marai and the chief inspector who are working together to try and put the pieces together. They're interviewing people, they're hunting down people who might be related to the incident, and for the most part, I think that first part of the book is really solid, but about the 90-page mark is when our main character, Kosuke Kendaichi, actually joins the cast. He's not present up until that point, but he joins around 90 pages in, and he just kind of shows up and goes, oh, actually, I've already solved it, let me tell you how it happened. And at the time that he is explaining what has happened, the killer is now also dead. So there is no one to refute anything he's saying, and a lot of his explanation is speculation based on an assumed motive, which I found very frustrating. I don't like it when a story is like, well, this is the answer, and it's the answer because you can't prove me wrong. I didn't find that very satisfying. It felt like all of the evidence that the police had found just kind of meant nothing, and this guy just comes in and he's like, well, obviously this is why it happened. Although I like Kendaichi as a character, I think he's fun to follow. He's this sort of lighthearted, silly, goofy guy. I didn't think he was a very good detective in this, and I found it a little bit annoying that it feels like after all of that investigation, it just cuts off so that Kendaichi can go, well, actually, this is what happened, without any, additional evidence other than somebody told him something that they had not told the police, and it's just, one small shred of information that leads to him having this, very big, complex hypothesis about what's happened. I found it to be a very unsatisfying mystery in the latter part of it, which was frustrating because I would say it was probably a 4-star up until that point, and it dropped it to a 2.5 or 3-star for me after that. But then we get to Why Did the Well Wheel Creak, and I actually really enjoyed that. Technically, Kendaichi is in that one, but he's only mentioned in passing at the very beginning and at the very end. So we find out that the narrator has gotten a hold of the documents for the Why Did the Well Wheel Creak story from Kendaichi, who got them from the people who originally wrote them. They're like a set of letters between some siblings. And that's it. Everything else is just the letters presented, the relevant letters presented as they are, and some newspaper clippings that are included to pick up the story where the letters stop. And I really enjoyed that. That one is about a family in a small village, kind of just after World War II, as they have a family member who has gone off to war and is not coming back. And it's about, like, a family feud, and it's about suspicion of people switching places, and it's all from the perspective of this young woman who has a heart condition, but she is very, very intelligent, and she's always been kind of a scholar, and she's watching all of these events play out within her family, and writing to a sibling who is kind of off in the distance at a sanatorium for people with tuberculosis. He's recovering from tuberculosis. It's a really interesting version of a mystery because it's this young woman piecing everything together and trying, with her kind of limited influence and limited ability to, like, do things herself because of her heart condition, to try and get information to try and figure out what the hell is going on. And I really liked it. I think that it does an interesting thing with the twist on, like, the identity of the person involved and with the identity of the person who actually did the killing. I really enjoyed the way that this played out at the end. I thought that Why Did the Well Creek was really clever, and I unfortunately think it's because Kendaichi was not anywhere near it, other than we know that he was given the letters by the person who had received all the letters, and then he has forwarded those letters on to the narrator. So that was a really fun one. I'm trying to be quite vague because it's a very short story, and I don't want to spoil it for you if you end up reading Why Did the Well Creek, but it's just really interesting because it is, like, this very small cast of characters in a small village. It's very particular to, like, what this small family is experiencing, and it talks a little bit about, like, the war and the way that that war has impacted people over time, and I liked it. I liked it a lot. It was really interesting. Ultimately, I think I'm probably going to give this book as a whole, like, a 3.5 star, but mostly kind of pulled up by the fact that that last, like, 90 pages is this completely separate mystery that I think is much better than the titular mystery here. So yeah, that is progress. That is my third book done, and I have submitted my points for my team. And now I am moving back to Before They Are Hanged, going to try and finish this in the next couple of days. But that actually, when I did the math, has brought down the overall number of pages I need to read per day for the rest of the month to finish my entire stack under 100. That's very exciting because I have been managing generally to keep up with my 100 pages a day. There was one day where I got to 50 pages, so I had to read 150 the next day. But that is making it, like, more and more doable for me to potentially finish the entire stack of books. So that's very exciting. We're back at my desk because it's the work week. But I have 100 pages left of this book, and I'm obsessed. I've been having a great time. I fully had other plans of things I wanted to do this week. Particularly, I meant to do some streaming and some stuff like that. But this book has had me in a chokehold for the last 4 days that I've been reading it. So I'm going to have to finish this immediately. I am planning to finish it tonight. I've got less than 100 pages left. I've got about 90 pages. So that is my project for this evening, is finishing this book. And I'm so excited. Really, honestly, my only quibble with this book so far is that there was one, like, throwaway line that kind of pissed me off, where there's a part where some characters see some creatures eating, like, a severed leg. And one of the characters, like, internal monologue is like, well, it must be a woman's leg because there's no hair on it. And that bothered me to no end. But that is my only quibble with the book so far. I love our characters. I love the journeys they're going on, particularly Jezzel. I am surprised at how much I like Jezzel now. He has grown dramatically. Like, he's had this really difficult traumatic thing happen to him, and, like, that has done a world of good for his attitude in some ways. He's finally facing hardship and having to grapple with what kind of legacy he leaves behind if something happens to him, and I'm really enjoying that emotional journey that Jezzel is going on, the ways that he's growing as a person. I'm having so much fun reading about him. And he was my least favorite perspective before. I loved reading his perspective, but my least favorite in the fact that he was just, like, a jerk. He was mean to everybody around him. So now I'm really enjoying how much I look forward to reading Jezzel's perspective and seeing how he's developing in the ways that he thinks about other people, the ways that he sees himself as a part of, like, a group, the way he sees himself as, like, a piece of the fabric of the world. So, I'm having a great time. Also, Logan continues to be a delight. There's a whole scene from his perspective that I don't think was supposed to be funny, but was funny. There is a sex scene, Logan is involved, that's all I will tell you. But his internal monologue, just the voice of it, with that context, for some reason just had me cracking up. I was cackling out loud while reading it. I love Logan so much, but that was just a very funny internal monologue bit to be reading. So yeah, I've got about 100 pages left, a little bit less, and I'm going to power through them tonight, but I just had to check in because, like I said, I'm kind of obsessed with this book, and I'm having a great time, and I'm just really feeling good this week. My reading has been so strong. I've been so consistent with it, which it's been a while since I've been consistent with my reading, and for the most part, I've really enjoyed everything I read this week, so I'm just having a great time. This readathon is helping me break out of the funk that I've been in, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this is going to end, because I suspect, if I remember how the previous book ended, it was pretty dramatic and pretty, like, sad in a lot of ways, so I'm thinking that's likely to be here. I suspect that it's going to make me at least tear up a little bit. I did accidentally spoil myself while trying to figure out how many pages were actually in here on something that happens in, like, the last little chunk, and I know that that's probably going to make me sob, so looking forward to it. I have done it. I finished Before They Are Hanged. I cried a lot reading the end of this. I had gotten spoiled on accident while trying to find out a different piece of information on one of the character deaths that happens. Even though it was coming, knowing it was coming didn't save me. I cried multiple times. There was also another character death I was not expecting that shocked me. Yeah, I finished up the book, and then I had to go into Jacob's office, because he's working on stuff for his streaming debut that's coming up on December 13th, by the way. If this goes up before that, you should definitely tune in for that. He's got a new model and everything, so he's re-debuting after having a bit of a hiatus. Anyway, that's completely irrelevant, but I went in while he was working on that stuff, and just had to have a little cry at him and tearfully be like, oh, there's a little funeral, and oh God. So that was what I did after I finished the book. And I think I have to give it 5 stars for that reaction and for the fact that this just absolutely had me in a chokehold the whole time I was reading it. I love this. I'm very excited to read book 3, but I definitely needed a break from it, so I think I'm going to come back to book 3 at the start of next year. This was a lot. It was really, really good, but it was a lot. But yeah, with that, I think we're going to end this vlog here. Yeah, sorry, my brain's a little tired. It is also quite late in the evening. But I think we're going to end this vlog here. This feels like a good wrap-up point for this first chunk, and I feel like I have really gotten my month started off well. I've already finished 4 books off my TBR, and I need to just submit my points for Before They Are Hanged, and I'll be good to go for this first set. I feel like I've got some really good momentum built up. I'm excited to keep reading. I do need a little break after finishing Before They Are Hanged, so I probably won't finish anything, or not finish, I won't start anything else tonight, but I feel like I'm ready. I'm, like, ready to keep reading, and with all the reading I've already done, I have brought the overall number of pages I need to read per day to be on track down from, I think it was originally around 112 pages to about 90. So that feels like some really great progress to me. So before we go, quick little wrap up. First thing I read was Backdraft by Cole McCade for Rudolph and the Christmas Lights prompts. Then I can grab my physical copy, because it arrived 2 days ago. The Golden Raven by Nora Sakovic. Read this one for Dasher, I believe. Then I read Murder of the Black Cat Cafe for Cupid. And finally, I read Before They Are Hanged, which is for, I can't remember. It's one of the last ones. Is it Blitzen? It might be Blitzen. I'm not sure, but the prompt is to read a book that's at least 5 years old? At least 5 years old, something like that. I probably should have looked that up before I started this, but like if I'm wrong, I'll put the prompt on the screen if I'm wrong. Anyway, this is for that one, and also for Christmas Star, which is to read a book over 500 pages. So again, feel like this is a really great start to my month, and I'm excited to keep going and hopefully gaining more points for my team. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have for you today. Let me know down in the comments below if you're participating in Reindeer Readathon, and if so, how your reading is going so far. Also, I really hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, I hope you consider giving it a like, maybe even subscribing to see what comes next. I'm currently posting at least one video a week, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.